Hey folks, welcome to this starting from scratch video. We are going to cover how to set up your Windows computer so that you can write audio software and regular software using Visual Studio and the Juice framework. This video is going to cover using Juice version 6, and we are going to cover a bunch of stuff in this video, so I'm going to go through the list right now. First things first, I'm running this in a virtual machine so you can get a sense of what it is like on a brand new fresh install of Windows with no other software installed. Okay, so we're just going to go through the whole process of setting up a brand new machine. Okay, here's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to download and install Visual Studio. We're going to download and install Fork. We are going to clone the Juice repository. We are going to build ProJuicer, which is what we use to make projects in Juice. We're going to make that. We're going to set it all up, and then we're going to make a Hello World project. Then we are going to make a Git repository for our Hello World project. We're going to get it all configured. We're going to make an initial commit for that project, and then we are going to take a quick look at the Juice repository inside of Fork, so we get familiar. Get familiar with what's going on inside the Juice framework and inside the Juice repository, and the important parts that go into it. Then we're going to make some changes to our code. We're going to commit those changes. We're going to make a Hello World repository on GitHub and push our changes to that. Then we're going to do a brief overview of how Git branches work and why they are useful. Then we're going to make a branch in our project. We're going to do some work on that branch, push our changes, and then we're going to take a look at why switching branches is useful. Okay, then we're going to do an overview of how Juice GUI projects are put together. And then we're going to add a couple more features to our Hello World project. We're going to commit that stuff and push it up to our GitHub repository. And then we're going to go through the process of actually cloning our repository as though we were migrating our project from one computer to another. And then we're just going to do a review of everything that we covered here. All right, plan on this taking about an hour to get fully set up. By the end of this video, you are going to have a fully set up machine where you can write audio software from scratch using the Juice framework, using Visual Studio. You can write regular software, GUI apps, audio plugins, command line stuff. You'll be all set and ready to go, and you'll know how to use Git, which is also one of the most important things if you're going to be writing software. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to download Visual Studio. So open up the browser. Now we're gonna search for Visual Studio. Okay, Visual Studio, right there. Okay, so we want the free version, community, free download. Okay, it's gonna start downloading automatically. Show all. Okay. Let's go on and open this guy up. Yes. All right, so now let's just go through this installer. Continue. It's going to download several files. Okay, we want to set this up for desktop development with C++, so click on that guy. And let's see, what do we not need? What do we need? We don't need this test adapter. We don't need test adapter for Boost because we're not using any of that stuff. For the rest of this, we can kind of leave it as is. Clang tools, that'd be good to have. It's not necessarily necessary. We can always come back to this and download it later. But for the most part, this is all we really need. I don't think we need live share because we're not sharing our code with other people. We are not going to be using CMake. Okay. So we got all those things. Take a look at this one more time. And we're not going to use modules because it's, that's not something that we're going to be interested in. That should do it. Okay, we just need MSVC version 1.4.2, then the Windows 10 SDK, profiling tools, just-in-time debugger. Not sure what this is, but we'll just leave it checked. We do want the address sanitizer. We're going to want IntelliCode, and we're going to want Clang. All right, so we can go ahead and just download all and then install. All right, that's going to download. So when this is done downloading, I will continue. All right, Visual Studio has finished downloading. So we're prompted with this. We don't need to sign in, so click Not Now, maybe later. All right, and we're just gonna go, I'm gonna go with the dark theme. Start Visual Studio. All right, there it goes. Okay, cool. We can close this for right now. All right, we can close this installer as well. All right, the next thing we want to do is get a Git GUI called fork. So type in fork.dev. All right. Now we want to grab the Windows version. Okay, free evaluation. All right, now let's just go through the fork installer. All right, now we need to provide a username and email address. And the reason for this is every time we make a commit, there needs to be a commit author, and that's what information is provided here. So I'm gonna type that in, matcat music, my email address. Okay, now click finish. It's gonna configure fork. All right, here goes fork. This is the first time we've run it. We can see this window a little bit. The next thing we need to do is clone juice and then build ProJuicer. So first things first, we need to get, let's see, first in fork, let us configure where it thinks all of our repositories are going to be stored. So it thinks they're going to be stored here in my users folder. I'm going to put them on a folder in the desktop. Let me just go to my desktop. I'm going to make a new folder called programming. And this is where I'm going to put my stuff. Select folder. Okay, cool. Close this for now. Go to your browser and you're going to look for Juice Framework. Okay, Juice is stored on GitHub, so we need to look for the GitHub. That's right here. All right, there's the Juice Framework, so go into that. Okay, now we need to clone this. So click the code button right here and copy this URL. Do not download the zip file. We are going to copy this URL. All right, now I'm going to do file, clone, and it has already supplied the URL. And this is going to get copied right to my programming folder on my desktop. All right, so then I just click clone. That's going to download it, receiving objects, okay, resolving the deltas. So basically what it's doing is taking the very first base copy of all the files, and it is applying all of the changes that were recorded in the commits to them until we get to the very, very top. Okay. So we are currently at the master branch. This is what has been checked out. Okay, so what we need to do now is build ProJuicer. So click this Open In button right here, Open in File Explorer. This is going to take us to the folder. Now navigate to the Extras folder, navigate to the ProJuicers folder, navigate to Builds, and now open the whichever version of Visual Studio you have. I'm running 2019, so I'm going to open that one. All right, so I'm going to open up the solution. Double clicking on that, opened it up just fine. Now we just need to build it. Build solution. So this is going to compile all of the source files. We can take a look in here in this Solution Explorer to see all the code. It's all, we've got our module code here. These are all the Juice modules. Then here's the actual source code for the project. We can see how the actual application gets put together. Here's the main. All right, here's part of one of the application files. We can, explore all of this kind of stuff. But we don't need to worry about that. Okay, we have a build succeeded down here. So we are done with Visual Studio for right now. So let's go ahead and close that. All right, the next thing is to open ProJuicer. So go to this x64 folder, go to the debug folder, go to the app folder, and now in here, we will find our executable. We just need to look for it. And it's going to be under P for ProJuicer. Those are all of the object files that get compiled and then linked and turned into this binary right here. So here it is, projuicer.exe. Okay, let's run this, and then we can configure it. All right, this is the new project wizard whenever we create something in ProJuicer. What we need to do first is set ourselves up in GPL mode. So go to File, go to Sign In, and now click Enable GPL Mode. What that does is it allows us to use ProJuicer without having to get a license from juice.com at the requirement that whenever we create projects, we make sure that they are open source. Meaning we're going to create a repository here and we're going to push our changes to it, and that repository will be public. Okay, now that we have done that, we need to configure our global paths. So click the File menu, go down to Global Paths, And now what we need to do is set where the juice folder lives. Okay, path to juice. So click on this, click this button with the 3 dots right here, and we're going to navigate to wherever it was downloaded. This was downloaded onto my desktop into a folder called programming. So that's where I'm going to check. Select folder. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for the juice modules folder. Okay, that's also on my desktop. Programming, juice, I'm looking for the actual modules folder itself. Select folder. Okay, rescan. No issues. Okay, cool. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and create a Hello World project. So make sure you're under Application, click on GUI, and now we're going to type in Hello World, like that. Okay, it's going to ask where do we want to save this once I click Create Project. And I want to save this into my programming folder on my desktop. Select folder. All right, cool. So this has created our Hello World project. Now I want to take a quick look at where these things actually exist. So I'm going to right click on one of these source files and choose Reveal in Explorer. Okay. Whenever you save a project in Producer, it creates a folder for it. In my case, it was this Hello World folder. I don't know if you saw that on camera. My cat climbed in there. When you save a project in Producer, it creates a folder for you, and then inside that folder is going to have a few folders inside of it. Okay, so first thing we have is our hello world.juicer. That is what this is. That's what basically we're seeing. It contains all the settings, contains all the files that we got open, all the project settings. It specifies which modules are used. It specifies all of the exporter settings for all of the different operating systems. Okay, inside the source folder, these are these 3 files right here. We got main component.h, .cpp, and then main.cpp. Those are the things that are right here. Okay, if we go back up, we have our juice library code folder, and that is automatically generated every time we resave this project. Same thing for this builds folder. This builds folder, basically when you hit this button right here, this save and open in IDE button, it's going to make this Visual Studio 19 folder. It's going to automatically generate a solution. It's going to automatically generate all of these other things for it. This leads us to the idea of what do we want to include in our repository. So before we get to that, let's build and run this just so we can see what the default GUI application looks like. So click Save and Open in IDE. This is going to open up Visual Studio. Okay. Now just click this, once this is ready, we can just click the local Windows debugger button right here, or do build and run. Start debugging. Okay, just click this button right here. It's going to start building it. Once it has finished being compiled, it will run the application. Done building project. All right. There it is. Here is our Hello World application. Okay, it's very simple. Every application on the computer starts out like this. It's just a simple bare bones window with nothing in it. And eventually you add a bunch of child components and sliders and other widgets and customize the drawing and make it, update itself based on the data that's going on. We are done with this right now, so we can close this and we can close Visual Studio. Okay, what we want to do now is create a repository for our project. So go to Fork. We're going to go to File, Init New Repository. Okay, now it's going to ask us where we want to do this. We want to click on our Hello World and create it right where our build, juice library, and source folders are. Select folder. All right, now we have nothing committed. We don't even have a branch yet. So what we have to do is figure out what do we want to keep and what do we not want to keep. Now let's go take a look at our project one more time. I'm going to talk about some of these files. Okay, Reveal and Explore. Okay, so in the juice project, every time you click this Save and Reopen button, it's going to regenerate these files right here. And it's also going to regenerate everything in the builds folder. Notice that before we did not have this x64 folder. We just had the solution, and then some of these like the resource and the VCX project file. Okay. And then once we compiled it, it created this debug folder, this app folder, and then it created all of these files. Created these object files, as well as produced this binary. Now, because that stuff gets recreated every time we compile our project, we don't want to include it in a repository because, that stuff just gets automatically created. There's no reason for it to be stored. So what we need to do in fork, we need to make a commit, and we also need to ignore some of these files. So the way that we want to do this is we can just right click on one of these files and click ignore, and then choose custom pattern. What this is going to do is to create a git ignore file. Okay, so we're going to type that, and now let's just get rid of this. And what we are going to type is */ builds with a capital B. That's going to exclude everything in the builds directory, which is great. If we have an export targeting iOS or Mac OS or Linux, it's going to exclude all of those targets too, which is great. So on the next line, do the same thing, */ juice library code. And this is going to exclude everything in the juice library code folder. Okay, now if this was Mac, if this was a Mac computer, we would add */ .ds_store, because these ds store files, they contain however our folder view is configured. If we're sorting alphabetically from Z to A or A to Z, or if we're showing it as columns, or if we're showing it as a list, or if we're showing icons, those preferences get stored in this ds store file. Okay, so we definitely want to exclude that. This is mainly if you're on OS X, but it's good to put it here just because there's a chance that if you're learning to write software, you're going to develop for both Windows and Mac, because, double your customer base that way. So, add it in here, click add to git ignore. All right, now we've got several files that we can see here. Okay, all of the stuff that was in our folder, if we go back to here, producer, programming, hello world. Okay, all of this stuff, it's excluding this, it's excluding this. The only things that are being kept, if I move this over, you shrink these windows a little bit so we can see what's going on. The only things that are being included is the git ignore file, the juicer file, everything in the source directory. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's make an initial commit. In order to do this, we have to stage our files. So let's just stage all of them. You can also click this button right here to unstage all and to stage all. All right, and now I'm going to write initial commit. This is going to create a branch for us. And if it doesn't, we can just create a branch very easily. Click commit. It's going to default to the master branch. And here is our first commit. Now that our code is stored, we've provided the initial base version of all of our source files that are going to be modified. We can take a look at what's going on in the juice repository and how they are making lots of changes all the time and why this is useful. Okay, so let's switch over to the juice repository. Now, the master branch on juice contains these changes right here. Okay, I believe there's a filter button. If I go to view, filter by active branch. Okay, so if you were to download the juice zip file from juice.com, you would get this version right here, juice 6.0.8. Now, you can see that there are several fixes: fixed in assertion, fixed bypass and program parameter, audio processor, fixed default behavior of update host display. These changes are not included in that zip file. So this is why it's important to download or to clone these repositories. Basically, whenever the juice team makes changes, we can pull in those changes without having to go download a new zip file. And it's very handy. We get all of these changes. And then the other part about it is that we can also go back. So right now we're on this commit and we can say, you know what, this bug, for whatever reason that they fixed here, is actually causing a problem in my code. So I'm going to go back to a previous version. I'm going to go back to 6.0.8. Or I could say, you know what, I don't want to use that. I'm going to go back to version 6.0. 6.0 to me was more stable for my customers than 6.0.8. Now this is just an example, but it is, that's the benefit of the whole Git repository system. Okay, we can basically stage different parts of our code and give certain people certain versions of our code, give other people more advanced versions of our code. For example, you might have your regular users that download the release version, and then you have these other users which are your beta testers, and those are the ones that get your your features that are in development that you're not ready to send out to all of your users. So that's an example of the purpose behind Git repositories. So an example of that is we've got this master branch here. You can see that it is, if I make this window a little bit bigger, shrink this guy down, you can see that the master branch is right here. You know, it has these two fixes applied to it. But there's all of these other changes which were completed on the develop branch. You know, a bunch of other fixes. Fixed some file permissions, fixed some comparison warnings, fixed a few switched namespace juice things, fixed bypass and program, minor refactoring, added some tests, removed Windows H window component with parent, fixed a compile error, stuff like that. Okay, there's all these little fixes, which, you know, if we want to make sure we have all those fixes included, we would simply double click on this or right click on it and check out the develop branch. And this is going to give us all of these fixes in the Juice code base. Okay, so we can do those same things with our project. So let's do that now. First, let's create a change. Let's just, you know, get familiar with the dev workflow. We're going to make a change, and then we're going to commit that change. So let's go over here. Let's open our project in Visual Studio. We're going to navigate in the Solution Explorer over here. We're going to head over to where it says Hello World. Open this, open the source folder, and we're going to open up main component.cpp. I'm going to change this font size to be 32.0f. All right, that's my change. You can see there's this little yellow line. Okay, if we save this, it turns green. Okay, this indicates that code was changed on this line. Let's run this and we will see that our Hello World text is bigger. All right, it's going to open up the debugger. Here it is. Our Hello World text is larger. So I'm happy with that change. I'm going to commit that change. So I'm going to switch back to fork. And I'm going to go right here under changes. I'm going to add a message. Changed font size. All right, I'm going to stage this change and then I'm going to commit. If we look under commits, here is my commit. Now it does not exist on a remote server, which you may notice over on Juice. It says origin/develop, and then for the master branch, we've got origin accessibility. So what we want to do is push our code to the origin branch. And in order to do that, we have to make an origin. So let's go over to GitHub and make one now. I'm gonna go to GitHub. I'm gonna sign in if I have an account. If I don't have an account, I'm going to sign up. Okay, I'm gonna sign in right now. All right, now that I'm signed in, I'm going to create a new repository. I'm going to click this little plus button right here, new repository. And now I'm going to type in Hello World Windows because this is the Windows version. I also have an OS X version that goes along with the OS X version of this video. Okay, I'm going to leave it public because I need to conform with the GPL license that I have agreed to when I am running ProJuicer in GPL mode. So this needs to be public. I am not going to add a README. I am not going to add a gitignore, and I'm not going to choose a license. I'm just going to click Create Repository. Okay, this is going to create a Hello World Win GitHub repository. All right, now I need to add this origin to my remote. So I can do this via command line, but I'm not doing anything with command line right now. I'm doing it with fork because it's a lot simpler. So I'm going to copy this URL to my remote. I'm going to go to fork. I'm going to right click where it says remotes, and I'm going to click add new remote. Now I'm going to give it the name origin, which is automatically populated, and it's going to have this URL, which is also automatically populated from what I had copied. So if I click test connection, it's going to prompt me. It should prompt me to sign in. So let's click add new remote. All right. Now let's see. If I try to push, is it going to ask me for credentials? Let's find out. Master, push master to origin. Push. All right, here it is. It wants me to sign in. Okay, sign in with your browser. I want to authorize Git Credential Manager. Authorization succeeded. You may now close this and return to the tab. Fantastic. How simple was that? That was awesome. And that was super easy because I was already signed in to GitHub here. All right, cool. So we can see this little icon right here is indicating that we are up to the origin, that the origin master branch and our master branch are at the same commit. So that's fantastic. Okay, so our changes have been pushed. I'm going to talk about branches and why they are useful now. how is this useful? Okay, it's useful because I have these changes where I updated the graphics, and I might not like them. So I'm not ready to send them out to my user base. I'm not ready for all of my customers or all of the people who use my app to see those changes yet. Okay, if we go back to the juice thing, maybe we're not ready to have a bunch of people use this fixed version of the ADSR because we're still trying to tweak it a little bit. We think we've solved the bug, but we're not sure. Okay, so this feature of branching lets us do that. Okay, we can say, you know what, I've got this branch, it's experimental, I'm not sure if I'm ready for all of my users to use it, so I'm gonna just put all these code changes right there. Everybody else though, they can just go back to the master branch. If we go back to our code, you can see that it's 32, the text is white, and it says hello world. And if we rebuild it, that's what we will see on our interface. Okay? So this is cool. We don't need to make a duplicate of our project folder to have a copy of the changes. We can just check out the branch that has those changes on it and then just build it and see those updated changes. And this is really handy when you're adding in new features to your plugin project, like adding new bypass buttons, or if you're adding new slider graphics, or if you add a new feature like a new reverb type to your FX processor, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's where branches are really, really helpful. Okay, so what we are going to do now with that knowledge is to create a branch. We're going to do some more code changes, and we are going to push those changes to our branch, and then we're going to check them out on GitHub. Okay, so let's right click on here, click create new branch, and let's give it the name graphics update. Okay, let's assume that we have a customer base and they want to see some improved visuals. So our project manager has said, hey, I need you to improve these visuals. Can you make a branch and do your work on that branch? Okay, we'll do checkout after create and checkout. All right, so now we have created a branch, and any changes that we write in our code are going to get committed to that branch. So let's do that now. Go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to make this font even bigger. I'm going to change the color, and I'm going to change the text. Okay, we're going to make this 48 size font. I'm going to make the text red, and I'm going to say hello new PFM C++ student. Okay, I'm going to make the text say that. All right, and now I'm just going to run it. Running it will automatically save that file. Build started. There we go. Well, our text is a little bit too big, so we'll just leave that as is. Okay, we can make this a little bit smaller, maybe like 44.f. Let's try that one more time. Cool. Hello, new PFM C++ student. All right, I'm happy with those graphics, so I'm going to make a commit on this branch demonstrating that. Okay, so improved app graphics. All right, let me stage those changes and commit. Now our changes exist here on our local branch, but they don't exist on the GitHub server. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I'm going to click push graphics update to origin. All right, push. All right, so now they exist on GitHub, which is cool. If we go over to our browser and refresh this, we can see here is our code, and it's only showing the master branch right now. But there are two branches that have been created. There's the graphics update branch and the master branch. And if you click right here, you can see that it says one commit ahead of master for the graphics update. Okay, we can also see that if we look at our commits on GitHub, it's going to show us the same thing. So the master branch, it's only showing the initial commit and the changed font size, which you can understandably see that here where we've got our origin master. It's up to this point. It's only up to this commit. If I switch to the other branch, graphics update, then we see our improved app graphics commit. Okay, and if we click on this, we can actually see what changes were made. We can see on the left side in red is the old code, and then on the right side in green is the new code. So this is pretty standard when you're looking at commits for the first time. Red means it was removed, green means it was added. Let's try switching the branch just to get familiar with what goes on when we do that. Okay, when I double click on this master, or if I right click and choose master checkout, it's going to apply all the code changes that we have done on the master branch. So master branch checkout. what that is going to do to our code is our font size is back to 32, our text color is white, and our text is back to hello world. Okay, if we run this, we will see that. It's got to recompile the things because the file's changed. There we go, hello world. Okay. Now, this is useful because you may have some features being developed on separate branches that you're not ready to show to your users. So, you know, this could be the branch that's out in the world that all of your user base is currently using. And then this could be like the new feature set that you're currently working on that you're gonna send off to your beta testers, and you're not ready to merge it back into the master branch. I'm not gonna talk about merging right now because that's covered later in the day 1 through 7 experience, but just know that the process of being able to switch branches allows you to change the code without having to actually make like a literal duplicate copy of your code set. There's a lot of people who, when they go to implement new features in their code, they will literally just right click on this, then they will copy and paste and make a duplicate and then implement their changes that way. And they'll, you know, add something to the file, to the folder name like v1.0.0, and then they'll duplicate it again and do v.1.0.1, v1.2.2, that sort of thing. And it's just a horrible practice because you end up with a bunch of file duplication, and it's very easy to get confused about where all of your stuff lives. And then B, it's really difficult to undo some of that stuff. So for example, say I didn't like this graphics update. So what I can do is I can just go back to this master branch. I can right click on the graphics update branch. I can just delete the branch, which means all of the changes that were done on that graphics update branch are gone. There's no record of them, okay? Now, if we were to do that, we just have to remember that our graphics update does exist on the GitHub server. That's what the origin/graphics update means. It means our code exists on that origin, on that remote server. So we would also need to delete the branch and then also delete the remote, okay? I'm not gonna do that right now, but that's how that would get done. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my graphics update branch. You can see that the code here has now changed back to 44, red text, and then our text has changed. I'm gonna go over the basics that go into a Juice GUI project. When you first create a Juice GUI project, it automatically creates for you 3 source files: main.cpp, main component.cpp, main component.h. Okay, so when basically this main.cpp, it's the outer shell of the application. Okay, and inside of this, it has a main window object, which is, you know, the main window that we get to see. That's this thing right here. And this thing gets filled with our main component right here. Okay, the main component is the thing that we are actually seeing. If I go back to main component.cpp. Okay, that's this thing right here. Or if I look at the header file. Okay, now these things, these components, the way Juice projects work, as well as the way most GUI applications work, is you have a component and it's going to have child components. That component you adjust, you control its visuals by modifying a paint function of some kind, and then you control where its child components get positioned by adjusting that stuff in the resized function. And then you're going to add stuff as well in the main component in its constructor. Okay, if you're not familiar with any of those terms, you know, constructor, function, override, any of that kind of stuff, don't worry, it's going to get covered later in the day 1 through 7 experience. Okay, with that said, over here, we can see that this main component, it doesn't have any child components. If we take a look here, right, there's no child components here. And thus in the main component, there's nothing being added to be made visible. There are no child components being resized. And the only thing that's happening in the paint function is it's just drawing some text in the middle of the window. Okay, so I want to add a toggle button that will demonstrate the idea of adding components. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to type Juice toggle button. Right, I've declared a member variable. Now I'm going to go to my main.cpp or main component.cpp. I'm going to add that toggle button as a child. Add and make visible. Oops. Toggle button. Now it is a child of our main component, but it doesn't we're not going to see anything unless we give it some bounds. So right here, I'm going to go toggle button dot, oops, let me spell that right, set bounds. And I'm going to give it a bounds, let's see, I'm going to put it in the upper left-hand corner, 10, 10. And then I'm going to put it in, I'm going to give it a size of 30 by 30. Okay. So the thing to remember with computer graphics is that the upper left-hand corner is 0, 0, and the lower right-hand corner is get width and get height. Okay. If we run this now, we will see a little toggle button. Let's check it out. All right, here's our little toggle button right there in the corner. That's fantastic. All right, I'm happy with these changes, so I'm going to commit them. We go right here. Notice that the changes happened in 2 different source files. Here is where we declared it as a child member. Here's where we added to our component as a child and made it visible. And then here's where we actually gave it some, gave it a bounding box. So I'm going to say added toggle button. All right, let me just stage all of these. Commit 2 files. Okay. Now again, we can see that this commit lives on our local branch, but it doesn't exist on the origin. Okay, so we need to right click, graphics update, push graphics update to origin, and now our change will exist on GitHub. Take a look over here, go back to our code, go back to our, change our branch to our graphics update branch. Sure enough, added toggle button. Awesome. Okay, so now I want to show the benefit of having this exist on GitHub. All right, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back over to my repository. I'm going to delete this. Oh, I'm sorry, this is still open here. Okay, we need to close Visual Studio. And then we need to close ProJuicer. All right, I'm going to delete this. Well, before I delete it, just note that, like, okay, we've got this juice library code folder and this builds folder. All right, let's go back. Let's get rid of this hello world folder. Okay, because our code exists on GitHub in fork, what we can do is do file. What we can do is do file, clone, after we copy the link to our repository. All right, click that code button, click this little clipboard to copy the URL. Now back in fork, go file, clone. Okay, it's going to give us that folder. It's going to give us the name that we want. If we do test connection, it's going to be good to go. Click that clone button. Now if we go back over here, here's our hello world win folder. Now you'll notice that it has already checked out the master branch because that's the default branch that Git and fork and the whole Git system is by default going to check out the master branch. Okay. Now if we go in here, we can see there's no builds folder. There's no juice library code folder. Okay, so what we have to do is open the juicer file with ProJuicer. Or we need to do file open this way. Then we can do desktop programming, hello world win juicer. Okay, there's our juicer file. And now if we do save and open, it's going to create those folders. Check it out. There's our juice library code folder and the builds folder. Okay, that's what I meant, how it like automatically generates those. Okay, so we're waiting for this to load. All right, we can take a look at our source code. Let's run this. We'll compile it. Now it's on the master branch, which means it's going to have our old style of text. All right, 32 white, get hello world. Okay. So this is what I mean about how this feature with our customized graphics and the toggle button, we have to check out this branch. Okay, just double click on it or right click and choose checkout. Once it's checked out, you're not going to get that option choice. Okay, once it's checked out, now we can go back here and build it. And you'll see that it adds these lines of code, toggle button. Okay, there's our toggle button there. All right, it's going to need a couple minutes to figure out where all this stuff is. But now we can just build it. Shouldn't have any problems. And there we go. We have our toggle button. We have our red text. Okay. So that's the beauty of using Git branches and storing our code online. Imagine this was like a laptop. You know, normally we work on a desktop computer and then we want to migrate our code over to our laptop because we're going to go to another room or we're going to go, you know, we have to go on a trip somewhere and we want to take our laptop with us so we can work. Okay, so that covers the whole idea behind building projects and cloning them, and why you need to, use a Git repository to keep track of where your code is. Okay, so let's do a review about everything we covered in this video. So first of all, we downloaded Visual Studio and installed it, and that took a long time because it's a fairly big installation. Then we grabbed Fork and we cloned the Juice repository. Then we built ProJuicer and created a Hello World project. Before we created this project, we went into the global paths and we configured those for the path to Juice and the Juice modules. And then the other thing we did was we also enabled Gpl Mode by going to the sign in window to do that. All right. And we created our Hello World project and we opened it up. We ran it for the first couple. We ran it. We made a change to the code. That was here when we changed that font size. Then we created a repository on GitHub and we pushed our changes to that. Okay. Then we did a little bit of a review on how Git branching works. And then we created a branch and did some more changes and pushed some more features to it. All right. And then we deleted this project from the computer and then cloned it and went through that process to kind of emulate what happens if you were to want to work on this code on a separate computer, or if you were sharing the repository with someone else. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. I'm hoping that you're able to be up and running now with a working computer to create audio software and regular software and audio plugins using the Juice framework and Visual Studio on Windows. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message in the day 1 through 7 Slack workspace, or shoot me an email, and I'll do my best to help you out. Okay, with that said, I'm going to wrap up this video, and good luck on the on your coding journey.